We're finally here, Sterling.
Week 10.
Week number 10. It's been such a long time.
It's been 10 weeks.
That's exactly how long it's been. Relatively feels like such a long time.
I don't know. It feels kind of like a blink of an eye to me. It's just kind of like happened.
That's because it was fun for you.
Torture for you, of course.
Torture
as
for
everything
me.
is.
Life is pain.
Life is pain.
Life is suffering.
See, this is. We were just talking about this. We have completely different philosophies. I mean, like, this is fun, enjoyable life I'm talking about.
I just learned that I'm a nihilist.
A nihilist. I don't think that's how you say it.
No. Hey, we have a very special guest today joining us. He is Shadow Nexus's very own Exodium. So we have one of the players who is going to move on to the playoff stage joining us. Exodium, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Exodium, are you a nihilist? Or
I am not a nihilist. Okay,
Oh,
I know. I'm still laughing about the fact they were talking about that before.
It's pretty great.
It's great. All good times here, except it doesn't mean anything in the end. But we're going to have them anyways. We have Exodium joining us as one of the top players in the Shadowverse scene right now. Obviously representing Shadow Nexus and here to give us a little bit of insight into the game and the decks that we'll be seeing today and kind of the Western competitive scene as it stands. I'd love to kind of start out the show this time around just learning about Exodium himself. Exodium, if you could tell us kind of how you got into Shadowverse, what your background is, and kind of how you see yourself in the scene, give us a little kickstart on who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually been playing competitive card games for a long time. Ever since I was a little kid, I started with Magic. I've played everything from Pokemon to the Spoils, if you guys know what that is, Marvel Universes Versus, all these different card games. And it wasn't until I believe it was at the end of December, beginning of January, when one of my Magic friends said, hey, you should check out this cool new game, Shadowverse. And I was like, all right, sweet. So I hopped on, I played through the tutorials, and yeah, that was that. I was sold. I played D-Shift, I think, to the dismay of many, and fell in love with it. And the spell boost mechanics sold me. I was like, this game has sweet interactions. I don't have to worry about mana. I can just get play points every turn and go to town. So that's how I got into it.
So you were a dirty, dirty Runecraft player.
So dirty.
Shame on you.
Unbelievably dirty.
I can't. Oh, God. Interest in this conversation is waning already.
Yeah, no, I just like, oh,
Disassociate. Disassociate. And
Rainy and I don't play D-Shift, obviously.
I play D-Shift all the time, actually. I love that deck. Cool. So Runecraft was your thing, introducing you into Shadowverse as a game, but then you very quickly rose up to kind of be a very competitive player, as well as a kind of a giver to the community and also a content creator. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So my main goal when I first started playing Shadowverse was to just start streaming. And a couple weeks into streaming, maybe a couple months, I can't remember now, but Aya actually approached me when he was starting the Shadow Nexus and said, hey, I'm starting this community. I want you to be a part of it. I think that you're, beginner focused, and that's what I am. Beginning players, new players, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of like my target audience. I want to help players get into the game. And since then, it's just, it's gone off the rails. We do weekly stuff now. We're on podcasts on Mondays. We do Deck Doctors, which is our most popular segment. People like giving us decks so that we can make them better, and then they can take them to the ladder of the tournaments or whatever. We actually made our own format called the Dream Format, where we have our own ban list, where things like Grimnir and Ektar are banned. You can't play them. And then as far as content creation, I write articles. A lot of my articles actually got deleted when our site went down, but they're coming back up again.
Cool.
You can actually see a new article from me today about Rune, as we're talking about it,
Nice.
and my love of it.
About Rune and your love for it. Where, incidentally,
That's right.
where can people find that?
TheShadowNexus.com.
ShadowNexus.com. Definitely go and read it. That's what I'm going to do after this broadcast. I'm going to read all about Runecraft. Sorry for the interruption. Keep going.
No, absolutely. And then as far as streaming is concerned, by request, I will be starting my stream up again next week.
Nice.
And you can find that at twitch.tv/ExodiumTV. So look forward to that.
Awesome. Awesome. So, tons of stuff. Obviously, Shadow Nexus is kind of one of those teams in the Shadowverse community. One of the many teams that contributes so much kind of content, and definitely glad to have you here. Now, being a self-proclaimed kind of Runecraft fanatic, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Runecraft as it relates to kind of the competitive meta now? And if I was a player and I said, you know what, I just want to play Runecraft, but how can I not lose every game I play? What do I have to do?
Oh, well, first, you might have to take a back seat to the fact that you might lose some games you play Rune right now, which is an unfortunate thing because, like, you know, I love Rune. If you want to have the best chance at success currently right now, I'd probably bring Daria, just like the straight-up Daria list, because we're seeing a huge resurgence in Vengeance Blood right now, and Daria is definitely well poised to take that out. Now, if you wanted to be super dirty, like I like to be, okay, with Rune, then you can take something like Blade Shift, essentially, where you take the enchanted swords and the I can't think of the name, the 2/2s
Blade
with
Mage?
Storm. Yes, Blade Mage.
Yes.
Jesus.
Yeah, everybody forgets his name.
Yes, Blade Mage. So
Doesn't
you
even have a
just
name,
Jam
just
those
the
with
mage with the
shift,
blade.
and then you just try to attack for 20. And you can do it as early as turn 4, but very
Turn
unlikely,
4.
and it won't happen very often.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
So you don't do anything cheeky like Runeblade Summoner, anything like
God,
that?
no. God, no. No, not that.
Wielder
cheeky.
Ginger.
No flaming glass, no ginger, none of that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Senpai's already ahead of you, as Senpai should be.
He's ahead of all of us, man.
He is living in a different timeline, I'm pretty sure.
He's waiting for this new set to drop so he can take his gingers to the ladder. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
absolutely.
super excited about the new expansion coming out, but we could talk a little bit more about that later. That's not the only change that has recently kind of been shaking up the Shadowverse community, though. Would love to. It's been what, 2 weeks now, a week-ish since the patch hit that kind of changed a few of the key cards of the game. And as kind of both a tournament organizer and a player, Exodium, I'd love to ask you some questions about how you think that might affect the Shadowverse Open that we're about to watch today. Week 10 is going to be the last week, so this is going to be the last direct invite that could be awarded. Then everything else is by points, and next week is the playoffs. What do you think we're going to see today in terms of decks and kind of what people are going to try to bring here?
Sure. So the Western scene, of course, a little different from the Eastern scene. We see a couple different decks here. However, I do imagine to see Mid Shadow being the #1 played deck on the day. However, there has been a slight departure since the changes to where some of the Shadow players are opting to play Nephthys because it actually has a very favorable matchup against the Mid Shadow list. So mostly Mid Shadow, maybe some Neph Shadow, but mostly people bringing Shadow in general, regardless of the two. As for their second deck, Vengeance Blood has become super popular in the West. We see it on the ladder all the time. We also see it in the tournaments now. We see Vengeance Blood rising up all the time. Forest has kind of taken a back seat. It was super popular even before the patch, but has slightly fallen off. We don't see much Forest anymore. Same with Sword. We saw a ton of Sword. I'm sure you guys casted a ton of Sword over the last couple of weeks.
We indeed have.
Mini swords.
Yes. And Sword has slightly declined as well, mostly because it's just not very favorable against most of the metagame right now. But of course, you're still probably going to see players like Noah, of course, playing Sword.
Sure.
But other than that, I think Haven has seen a resurgence in both the Storm and the Aegis variants. Slightly into the Seraph variants, but not many. Like you might see 1 or 2 Seraph decks in the entire tournament, but mostly probably Aegis and then Storm and then Seraph. And then as far as other decks are concerned, really just anything that somebody's come up with to beat Shadow. But other than that, it's probably going to be something of the realm of Shadow, then Haven / Blood, and then Sword. And then the other deck that people still want to try to make work is Dragon. I see it a lot in the East, but it's been dying off a lot in the West. But we can definitely see Dragon take into account today. So
Interesting. So there's still a chance that Havencraft can take the tournament. We still have the 2 weeks of playoffs.
1 week left. He could win one of the playoffs.
And win one of the playoffs. But then very soon, Tempest of the Gods is going to come to a close, and Havencraft may have never won an NGE tournament ever.
yes,
That would be a sad day.
I would be sad. I'd be sad for myself and mostly for I. I know that he would be he'd be very sad never to see me.
He'd lock himself in a room, turn off the lights, and just start weeping in the corner of the room. Fetal position and all.
Santa Claus did not come this year.
You will bear witness. You will be by his side.
Yes.
By his side. Hey, that's really actually very good information and very informative for what we'll see today. The last thing I would love to ask is, what do you expect your experience in the playoffs to be like, as well as who are some of the players you think are the most scary right now, who is hot, so to speak, and who maybe not, if you think that there is a player that's going to the playoffs who maybe, you know, maybe you think you could take him. What do you think that experience is going to be like for you?
Absolutely. So one of the coolest experiences about the playoffs is that not too many, but like about 2, maybe 3 players from each of the top teams, Mana Surge, Counterpoint Virtuosos, EXG, Shadow Nexus, all of us have a couple players in the playoffs. So I think that's going to make it super tense because we have all these different teams testing for the same event. We're not going to be sharing information. I guarantee you that. I doubt they're going to be sharing information.
The walls
either,
are coming up.
That's right. That's right. So I expect a lot of competition from all the team players. I can't really say there's anybody who would be in the playoffs that doesn't deserve to be there or I think I'd have an easy time against, other than the fact that some of these players who are by themselves that don't have a team might not have enough time to test with the appropriate decks, the amount of players, and the amount of quality players that you would need to win a tournament. So
Gotcha.
I'd say they're at maybe a little bit of a disadvantage.
Iron sharpens iron kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Resources are certainly a real thing to consider at this stage because any little benefit you can gain is actually really important. So it's interesting to think about. I mean, we see consistently that these teams are making it to the top 8s of the open entry tournaments, and specifically players like EXG, you know, Omega in the 7th, and for Shadow Nexus, we got Unlucker, who actually makes it pretty high up there pretty frequently as well. And of course, the one and only, the boy himself, Noah, right?
Yeah. If anything, Noah might be my most feared opponent because I don't see that man making very many mistakes. And you know, we can see that on a weekly basis as he makes top 8 most of the week. So,
gotcha.
Interesting. So, last week of the Shadowverse Open, the whole Season 1 is about to be wrapping up, and that obviously brings a lot of excitement with the playoffs and also a lot of excitement for what's going to come. Exodium, you get to be a big part of that. Really glad to have you on the pre-show talking about anything, all your thoughts of tournament play, as well as kind of the stuff that you do for the community. Is there any kind of shout-outs, any kind of last thoughts you want to throw out there, or anything you think would be super important to kind of talk about and discuss?
Yes, absolutely. Before the shoutouts, the biggest thing that's coming up, especially because the season's coming to the close, is the new set is coming out, and the Shadow Nexus will be hosting the release tournament for that. And not only that, we're giving away sweet prizes for it. The first place competitor gets a real, authentic Olivia statue, and those things are hard to come by. Okay, you can't just pick those up on the side of the street.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they're very, very limited edition.
We're giving away a whole bunch of cool stuff on top of the statue. Psy Games might get involved. We're still sorting that stuff out, so nothing official about that yet. But the release tournament will happen. As far as shout out to all the teams for making the community great. Shout out for everybody viewing. Shout out to you guys, obviously, for casting and making NGE enjoyable to watch every week. Yeah, you know, just shout outs to everybody because everybody's awesome.
Doing a lot of shouting.
That's right.
Doing a lot of outing. Thanks very much, Exodia, for tuning in. Very excited for that release event. I'm going to be watching. I love the theme of the new event, and I really like how all the cards are kind of coming together and, you know, reimagining some of these stories. So very exciting to me. With that, we're going to be closing up this pre-show segment. There's only a few minutes left before week 10 of the Shadowverse Open starts, and let's figure out who that last playoff invite is going to be. We'll see you guys in a moment for more NGE Shadowverse Open.